Congratulations, guys, you made it through yet another year. Well, that might have been underwhelming, but what wasn't underwhelming was the sheer number of excellent games released in 2024. While I went into 2024 with pretty low expectations, there was not that much I was looking forward to playing, and gaming itself seemed to be in pretty dire straits, with all the talk of layoffs and studio closures across the industry. And yet, 2024 unleashed a plethora of surprises, the likes of which I never expected, and it quickly became an excellent year for gaming. In the calendar year of 2024, I completed 26 games that were released, and in this video I'll share my top 10 culminating in my own personal game of the year. At the end of the video I'll reveal every game that I played. Please remember that I'm just some bald Australian that lives in Japan and is sitting in an IKEA poeng, and these are just my opinions. If your favorite game doesn't appear on this list or you disagree with my rankings, please let me know down in the comments. Remember that the true game of the year is the one that you enjoyed most, so I'd love to hear what your pick is and why. With that out of the way, let's take a look back on the year that was, and celebrate some excellent titles that deserve a heap of praise. And more importantly, titles that you should play if you haven't already. Here we go, number 10. Persona 3 Reload is more than just a remake of the 18-year-old original, but a glow-up worthy of being called a new game. Remade from the ground up using the engine and artistic sensibilities of Persona 5, this is the definitive way to play Persona 3. While seemingly just a high school drama, the themes of this game are surprisingly deep and complex, and do not shy away from dark subject matter like death and grief. Coupled with outstanding turn-based gameplay, the Persona series has never been this fun to play. Like with all Persona games, there's a real thrill in watching your party hit their opponent's weaknesses and nail that all-out attack, wiping out the field of enemies. And each character is perfectly balanced, with their own unique skills and special theurgy attack. The sense of progression you feel in gameplay is perfectly tied to the sense of progression you feel through the story. While the fully voiced cutscenes and support side stories are excellent, I feel like there was a missed opportunity to include some new content not seen in the original. I also bought the overpriced episode Aegis DLC, which I felt wasn't really worth it, as that DLC was just a tiring slog of battles just to get a little extra good story content at the end. Additionally, I also felt the main story was just a little short, especially compared to Personas 4 and 5, and another Atlus RPG that will appear later in this video. As a newcomer to Persona 3, I felt the ending was too sudden and out of nowhere, and perhaps the story content in the DLC was supposed to alleviate this, but ultimately I still felt like Atlus could have used this opportunity to add a little more to the main game, but I suppose staying true to the original does not run the risk of upsetting the fandom. Anyway, gripes aside, Persona 3 Reload is an excellent RPG and worthy of your time. I'm glad I held off on playing the original for years in hopes of a remake, so I'm glad I could go in fresh to experience the world and characters of Persona 3 in the best possible way. Returning players may have a different perspective, so if that's you, keep that in mind. But if it's your first time, you have nothing to worry about. It's a solid, timeless JRPG, and both Persona newcomers and veterans can enjoy it. The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom marks the playable debut of Princess Zelda, almost 40 years into the series named after her. This is a far cry from a gender-swapped Legend of Zelda, but an exciting new spin on the classic formula. Instead of slashing with a sword, Zelda uses her magical skills to create copies of objects and enemies in the overworld, and use them to explore and defend herself. Much like its 3D counterparts Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there's a surprising amount of depth to the system that allows for a seemingly infinite number of solutions to a single puzzle or obstacle, albeit on a smaller scale. It's a fun and rewarding gameplay loop, and unlike anything else released this year. While I did have some trepidation when it was revealed, as I wasn't a fan of the Link's Awakening art style, and this is not at all what I had in mind for Zelda's playable debut, but Grezzo, the studio usually in charge of remaking old Zelda games, have put together an excellent debut original Zelda game and proved me completely wrong. However, it is let down by its overall short length, and I felt like it didn't quite make the most of its creative gameplay. We could have used at least 4 to 5 more hours of story for it to truly feel like it belongs in the Zelda canon, as the story was intriguing but a little light. And we also could have used some more challenges and puzzles that really test the player on how to best make use of their echoes in creative and unexpected ways. Its length and unrealized potential aside, Echoes of Wisdom will still scratch that Zelda itch and give you a unique and creative gameplay experience. In a year that was pretty light on Nintendo releases, this is one of the highlights from them. While it can't compare to the more mainline Zelda games, as a creative experiment I'm glad it exists, and I hope Grezzo gets the chance to work on more original Zeldas. And I'm also looking forward to Nintendo taking more risks with the Zelda franchise going forward. Balatro has to be the most addictive thing mankind has ever created, and I mean that in the best possible way. It's insane to think that it was put together by a one-person development team, but in Balatro, Local Thunk have delivered the impossible. A roguelike deck-building game based on the rules of poker that is simple on the surface but infinitely complex and unexpected. In Balatro, you must play poker hands to earn enough points or chips to pass the stage or blind. There are 3 blinds per ante, a small blind, a big blind, and a boss blind, with the boss blind adding in a special rule that will challenge you. Pass 8 antes and you've made it to the end of a run. Chips are earned based on the complexity of the poker hand. A more complex poker hand, like a royal flush, will reward you with a greater number of chips and multipliers. But it doesn't stop there. Between blinds, you can shop for jokers, essentially equipable skills that grant you extra chips and multipliers based on what you've played, such as giving you extra multipliers for playing spades, or giving you the option to play a straight with gaps between cards, to name a couple. There's hundreds of these to find, and playing them in combination can lead to huge gains in both chips and multipliers. Not only that, the shop gives you the chance to upgrade your standard cards, like granting it extra chips or multipliers when played. There's also planet cards, which raise the level of hand types, and of course there's also different types of decks that grant you extra hands or money. The combinations of jokers, arcana, planets, and decks is essentially infinite, so each time you play, your run will be completely different. There's no greater joy than playing a risky hand in a boss blind and watching your multipliers increase, holding your breath to see if it's enough to pass. There's a good reason Balatro is getting a heap of praise, and it truly deserves all the praise it's been getting. I've sunk more than 50 productivity destroying hours into it already. The game is so hypnotic that when you're playing it feels like the concept of time has melted away and that Balatro is the only important thing in existence. This is Tetris for a new generation. I swear to God I'm seeing playing cards in my dreams. It's just that intoxicating. An incredible feat of creativity. Go play it if you haven't already. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is the long-awaited comeback for the Prince of Persia series, this time taking the form of a stylish 2D Metroidvania. While I thought the story was a little weak in places and the lore of this world not very interesting, Lost Crown makes up for it and then some with its tightly designed labyrinth and outstanding platform and combat. Some of these platforming challenges are the best I've ever experienced, and that's coming from someone whose second favorite genre is 2D platformers. Not only is platforming done well, but it introduces gimmicks previously never seen before. The best of these is the ability to create an image of yourself, then press R to teleport yourself back to that image of yourself. This has infinite applications and is especially useful in dodging buzzsaws and enemy slashes. Couple this with other mobility gimmicks like double jumps and arrows, and you have one of the most tightly constructed platformers ever. You'll need to make the most of every platforming gimmick at your disposal as you explore the labyrinth of Mount Kaf and fight its formidable cast of monsters. Combat is another excellent aspect of Lost Crown, giving the player a fast-paced and thrilling style of combat usually reserved for big-budget 3D adventures, yet flawlessly converted to 2D. Every sword slash feels raw and powerful, and there's nothing more satisfying than parrying a powerful blow, then unleashing a special move to kick their ass. Special moves are just one of the many customizable features present in this game, meaning your combat options are as limitless as your platforming ones. There's also some very sensibly priced DLC, Mask of Darkness, that expands the game in a meaningful way and is totally worth purchasing too. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is already one of the greats of the Metroidvania genre, which means it's a terrible shame it did not meet sales expectations, with Ubisoft already disbanding its development team and cancelling production of a sequel. I really hate that the industry is like this. If something isn't an immediate hit, it's considered a failure. Lost Crown is anything but, and despite the destiny of its development team, it's still worth your time and money. Definitely worth purchasing for your own enjoyment, and also to send a message to Ubisoft that games like these are what we really want to play. Wait, what game, I hear you ask? While it may have slipped under a lot of people's radars, especially releasing around the same time as Animal Well, more people really ought to play this indie, my favorite indie of the year. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a puzzle game that puts you in a remote forest hotel in which almost every door has a combination lock. With little to no direction, you're tasked with puzzling out hundreds of number-based puzzles to open doors, and also with solving the increasing number of mysteries to figure out what's really going on. Who is the blind woman upstairs? Why are ghosts haunting you? And can you find your way to the center of the maze? Using a Twin Peaks-like atmosphere to tell a fragmented story about lofty and mature themes like religion, politics, and the purpose of art, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is squarely an indie for adults, perfect for those that grew up on Professor Layton but are craving something darker. The story is not explicitly spelled out for you, it's up to you to piece it together and interpret it for yourself. I'm sure every player will have a different interpretation. And as for those puzzles, not only are they fun, but they will challenge you beyond the frame of the device you're playing on. I had to get a notebook and scroll out diagrams and ciphers with an actual pencil to reference later, as the puzzles build upon one another, similar to the process of learning a language. In its epic finale, all puzzle styles culminate in the most satisfying way possible. One of the most unique games I've played, and it resonated with me more personally than any other game in this video. While that's my personal experience and it might not resonate with everyone the same way, it's certainly worth seeking out anyway. It may be the most unknown and least celebrated title in this top 10, but it is in no way less equal to its peers. Hats off to Swedish developer Simogo, you did well with this one. Can't wait to see what they do next. In a year stacked with awesome and creative indies, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes was the best one for me. And we've reached halfway. If you're enjoying this video, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel for more unbiased game reviews. 2025 is sure to be an exciting year for games with the impending release of the Switch 2, so I really can't wait to talk about all major releases for it right here on this channel. I really do appreciate every like, comment, and especially every new subscriber. Alright, back to the countdown with number 5. Stellar Blade is an outstanding action-adventure console debut from Korean developer Shift Up, who will undoubtedly be a studio to watch from now on. Putting you in the role of Eve, a cybernetic human dispatched from a space colony to reclaim Earth from alien usurpers, Stellar Blade is a thrilling, Platinum Games-style action game that culminates everything we love about this genre. It clearly takes a lot of influence from games such as Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, Astral Chain, Jedi Fallen Order, and especially Nier Automata. That Nier Automata collab DLC was a no-brainer, obviously. While Stellar Blade itself doesn't do that much in its gameplay that those other games haven't already done, it does do them exceptionally well. And as the first of its kind built specifically for this generation of high-end hardware, this is the genre's first major outing on the PS5. It's a real showcase for how powerful the PS5 is, with stunningly beautiful graphics and flawless performance without a single issue. Watching Eve become more powerful and able to execute more powerful and exciting combos is a hugely fun and rewarding experience, as is the game's seemingly limitless supply of unlockable upgrades and costumes, which are worth seeking out by doing optional side quests. In particular, dressing Eve up in stylish costumes was almost as fun as combat itself. Unfortunately, I felt like a lot of the media discourse around Stellar Blade focused too much on whether it's politically correct to release a game in 2024 starring a beautiful woman like this, rather than focusing on the gameplay, story, and other attributes. Sadly, I think that's the reason I held off on playing for so long, because I didn't hear enough about the game itself. But I'm so glad I got into it recently, because it is an excellent entry in the action-adventure genre. Nothing more fun than kicking a monstrous boss's ass with swords and guns. That's all gamers need, man. While the story and gameplay may be derivative, especially the story with the most obvious plot twist I could see a mile away, it is, after all, an exceptionally well put together package. Emio the Smiling Man is another game which I felt did not get enough love because of the discourse around it. While there was huge excitement over the initial teaser, with fan speculation running rampant that this was Nintendo's first horror game, once it was revealed to be a legacy sequel to the niche Famicom Detective Club series, a collective sigh was exhaled around the world and talk about the game vanished instantly. And it's a damn shame, because out of all the games I played this year, this is the one with the story that I find myself thinking about the most, almost 6 months later. While I've never been a fan of horror games, I don't like Resident Evil or Silent Hill or anything like that because I'm too easily scared, I've always been a fan of this kind of horror in TV and movies. That is to say, the kind of horror that doesn't involve anything supernatural like ghosts or zombies, but about the real horror that exists just beneath the surface of a supposedly idyllic society. Emio does not shy away from heavy-handed taboo topics, and its shocking, show-stopping finale has to be one of the ballsiest things Nintendo has ever done. It's a murder mystery detective game worthy of its peers across literature, TV, and film. Furthermore, the anime-style animation is stunning and the music is atmospherically perfect. Playing this game, you are transported to a shockingly accurate late 80s rural Japan setting. If you're interested in Japanese history and culture, then this is a must-play for you. Even though I wasn't alive at that time in the late 80s, I have been to the Japanese countryside countless times, and this game perfectly encapsulates that vibe. And then there's the late 80s synthy city pop music that plays at a cheerful dissonance against the horrors happening in the story. Very rarely does a game capture the essence of real-life Japan, but Emio's version of Japan is a perfect depiction of it. And finally, there's what this game means for the industry and for Nintendo as a company. This is clearly a passion project from longtime Nintendo veteran and Metroid series creator Yoshio Sakamoto. There is no world where Emio could be a successful, best-selling game. Too niche, too weird, and too lacking in mass appeal. But this is why it's important. Nintendo signed off on a weird, unmarketable murder mystery, and that's simply awesome. We need more weirder, experimental titles like this, and less slop like gacha games and competitive shooters. Go play EMEO, you won't regret it. It's my highest rated Nintendo game of the year, and an excellent effort from Dev Studio Majors. Hope to see more of the Famicom Detective Club series in the future. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was the game that finally convinced me to buy a PS5, and it was worth every yen. I loved 2020's excellent 7 remake, and after the cliffhanger ending of that game, no way was I going to miss playing Rebirth on day one. In terms of environmental design, this game is a masterclass. Almost every locale from the PS1 original has been remade and remixed for a new generation, with a level of detail not often seen. The Gold Saucer in particular is a standout, as that was my favourite location in the original, and its epic new version is nothing short of stunning. Such a vibe. The gameplay is an extension of Remake's Kingdom Hearts style action RPG, improved upon further with new party members. Barret will always be my favourite to use, but seeing how the formula has been refined from Remake, I found Tifa and Aerith less cumbersome to control than last time, and new party members Red 13 and Kate Sith bring even more variety. Each character feels unique and fun to use, a difficult feat to pull off in a game like this that is so stuffed with content and ideas. Sometimes those ideas are a bit much, as not every one of Rebirth's ample selection of minigames hit home with me. Some were fun, some felt like a confusing waste of time I just wanted to skip through. The worst of all offenders was the Queen's Blood card game. That game is complex enough to warrant a separate release on the PSN store or the eShop. Incorporated into Rebirth, it felt like a waste of time, and I didn't like that 100%ing Rebirth was tied to beating every Queen's Blood opponent. Maybe history will be kinder to Queen's Blood, but this is the sticking point that stopped it being Game of the Year for me. I hope in the trilogy's conclusion they pump the brakes a bit on the minigames. But aside from that, it's an excellent game. World building, storytelling, music, combat, and voice acting are firing on all cylinders, and we are fortunate to be living in a time where this insane labor of love to FF7 is released. I'm not the biggest FF fan around, but I will show up for anything 7 related. Hugely crowd-pleasing and insanely fun to play. I can't wait for part 3. Metaphor ReFantasio is the best JRPG of 2024 in what people are already calling the year of the RPG. If Persona 3 Reload was just an appetizer, this is the main course, and what a feast it absolutely is. A 100+ hour adventure that gives you a compelling story, some of the most well-written characters in gaming ever, and infinitely customizable, addictive gameplay. Metaphor ReFantasio is the true culmination of everything the RPG genre aspires to be, and is the magnum opus of Atlus. One of the best in the business when it comes to this genre. While EMEO the Smiling Man story may have resonated with me personally, Metaphor ReFantasio's story will resonate more universally among gamers. It confronts difficult topics like politics, religion, and racial discrimination with a nuance and grace not often seen in games, and has several gut-punching twists. A narrative unlike any other. And then there's the characters. While many love Hulkenberg, the pointy-eared knight, and name her as the best character, I have to give best character to Luis, the villain. Possibly one of the best villains in games since Sephiroth. He is just straight up despicably evil, and I really love that Atlus went with a straight down the line evil dude to pit the player against. And then there's the battle system, easily one of the best RPG battle systems ever coded, taking Persona's addictive, critical hit focus gameplay one step further with its insanely complex customizable class system, means every gamer can play to their preference, and every gamer will have a unique run through the main story. While a bit overwhelming for newcomers, it's just pure bliss for fans of the genre. And finally, it's all wrapped up in some of the best aesthetics seen in 2024. The anime art style is rendered gorgeously, particularly the cutscenes. There are almost no loading times to speak of on PS5, and I'm floored at how snappy it all is, especially as there's not even a split second of downtime between battles and overworld. And then there is the GOAT, Shoji Meguro's soundtrack, possibly his finest work to date. The decision to incorporate Buddhist chanting into the main battle theme is a wild one. Unlike anything I've ever heard, but just flippin' awesome, man. Metaphor ReFantasio is the real deal. It reinvigorated my love for JRPGs unlike any other in the year of the RPG. An absolute must-play experience. And now, it's time for Game of the Year. Before revealing what it is, I'd just like to talk about... Hey, what is that funky music? Well, I think it's a sign to just get on with it. Screw the preamble, here's Game of the Year, Astrobot. Coming out of absolutely nowhere, Astrobot was the surprise hit of 2024 for critics, gamers, and especially me personally. The humble 3D platformer is my favourite genre, and while the free PS5 pack-in software Astro's Playroom amused me for a bit, I was certainly not hyped for a full-priced, expanded experience, and I certainly did not think the humble Astrobot could compete on the same playing field as 3D Mario. But after seeing the heaps of praise Astrobot got on social media, I changed my tune, gave it a go, and boy am I glad that I did, because, to my massive surprise, it was the most sheer fun I had in gaming all year. And just to be clear, I'm not jumping on board the Game Awards hype train here. I don't really care about the Game Awards, and I wrote this script before the Game Awards even aired, but I will say that Astrobot was a well-deserved Game of the Year winner. And it is a fun coincidence that my opinion and the opinion of the mainstream media match. A true credit to how freaking awesome Astrobot is. While overall Astrobot was not that challenging, and I do love challenging platformers, Team Asobi really focused on the sense of movement and joy that running around in 3D space gives the player, only possible to be found in this genre. The decision was a smart one because there's never a dull moment. Astro finds himself in all manner of sci-fi tinged environments, deserts, fields, glaciers, volcanoes, space. They're all here, and yet because of the relentlessly fast pace, they fly by and overload your senses in the best possible way. You'll want to 100% this game like I did and seek out every collectible and VIP bot. The VIP bots are little robots dressed up as classic Sony characters celebrating the 30th anniversary of the PlayStation brand. Metal Gear, Silent Hill, Sly Cooper, Parappa the Rapper, Crash Bandicoot, they're all here. While there was a cynical viewpoint that the mainstream media went with, that seeing all these corpses of classic characters reanimated and paraded around made Astrobot more like a graveyard for IPs that were killed off by the public's changing tastes and corporate decision making behind the scenes. But I'd like to politely give a big middle finger to those critics. Astrobot is an excellent celebration of Sony's long history. While I'm more of a Nintendo guy than a Sony guy, it's still nostalgic seeing a lot of these characters that have long been favourites of gamers around the world getting their time in the spotlight once again. It had a knock-on effect on me, a Nintendo guy, and made me seek out a lot of Sony classics that I missed. After the absolute joy that was the Loco Roco stage, I immediately downloaded Loco Roco from the PSN and loved that too. And I had never even heard of Loco Roco, never having owned a PSP back in the day. I also downloaded other Sony classics like a Dragon and Ratchet and Clank to give those a go as well. So in addition to Astrobot being a fun enough game in its own right, it also has the power to inspire gamers to seek out other games they might not have otherwise played. That's a huge testament to Team Asobi pulling off a 30-year anniversary celebration game that does more than just celebrate but reinvigorate every IP in Sony's legacy. That's worth the price of the game alone, as you too may find yourself discovering new favorites. And finally, the music. Talk about absolute earworms. If you've watched my videos, you know how music is one of, if not the most important aspects of gaming to me. And here, Kenneth C.M. Young's catchy soundtrack is by far the best one of the year. If anything could beat Metaphor's Buddhist chanting for me, it's a cute little robot voice saying, "I am Astrobot." Or a talking tree rapping along to what's on screen. Every composition is a stroke of genius, and this soundtrack was my most played album on Apple Music this year. I find myself listening to it almost every day. To conclude, Astrobot is the complete package in its gameplay, aesthetics, vibes, and celebratory nature, and I've also chosen it as Game of the Year for political reasons. Considering its success, I hope Astrobot is a wake-up call to Sony and other major publishers. A modestly budgeted, mid-sized, single-player adventure that focuses on fun above everything else is all gamers need. We don't need more of these infinitely playable looter shooters riddled with microtransactions. Sony's supposedly engineered for success Concord was an absolute failure this year. It cost Sony millions of dollars, yet crashed and burned on launch. Yet the humble and cute Astrobot could light social media on fire and convert naysayers like me. Instead of greenlighting big budget shooters and continually laying off hardworking staff when these over-budgeted games underperform, they just ought to sign off on more games like Astrobot instead. We just need more fun, self-contained experiences like this. They keep gamers entertained, they keep people employed, and they keep the spirit of gaming, the best hobby in the world, truly alive. That's all I'd like to say on the matter. Anyway, go play Astrobot if you haven't already, you won't regret it. And there you have it, the best games I played this year. This is now the third of these top 10 games of the year videos I've done on YouTube, and now Astrobot sits comfortably alongside previous winners Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Well deserved indeed. Throughout this year, I logged every game that I played for the first time on the Notes app on my phone, so here is my play history for this year. Games that were released in 2024 are in bold. It's pretty amazing to see how many unique gaming experiences I had this year, the majority of them new games. I was also glad to catch up on some of my backlog. Truly an outstanding year, and I can't wait to do it all again next year. Once again, let me know in the comments down below what your favourite game of the year was, and subscribe while you're down there. So thanks for watching, have a happy and safe new year, and I'll see you in 2025.